Namaste and greetings. Hello and welcome to the Center for Spiritually Integrated Arts, a Centers for Spiritual Living teaching center. I am Reverend Dr. Raymont Anderson, the founding minister and the spiritual director. If you have questions about what is a teaching center, who is Reverend Dr. Raymont Anderson, what is Centers for Spiritual Living, what is metaphysical spirituality, feel free to send an email to spirituallyintegratedArts@gmail.com. The website with tons of information will be available soon. In the meantime, feel free to follow us, to join us, to subscribe via Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and our YouTube channel. For more information, as I said, send an email. Look for us. Join us. I look forward to chatting with you more very soon. Much love, appreciation, and all of that. Blessings. Hello, once again. Today, May 14th, following the Sunday message. In case you didn't already know, following the Sunday message, we gather in Zoom for our After Sunday Message Fellowship. An opportunity to meet new folks, chat with the folks that you already know, build bonds of connection, talk about anything and everything. But what happens in Zoom stays in Zoom. Now, if you don't already have the Zoom link, then send an email to spirituallyintegratederarts@gmail.com. The link will be sent to you. For those who already have the link, you probably already know that as soon as the Sunday message completes, and I do the closing prayer and say, Amen, and so it is, Ashe, Aho, then we go over to Zoom and start our chat, our fellowship. Now, If today is your first day joining us, then you may not know that the theme for May is light within the shadows. Yes, we are talking about the darkness. And specifically, today's title is Unlearning the Fear of Darkness. We have vilified the darkness by likening it to evil and evil forces for eons, probably since the dawn of creation and before. We've been taught, we've been indoctrinated to fear the darkness, to fear the unknown, to fear the mystery instead of embracing it. The darkness is that space of fertile creation, creativity, and consciousness. Without darkness, without shadow, without shade, as any artist or photographer already knows, there is no recognition of space or form. Now, in order to appreciate the beauty and the wisdom of the darkness, we have to unlearn the stigma related to it. What if we partnered with the darkness instead of fearing it, trying to control it, labeling it, judging it? What if we held the unknown with a sense of wonderment instead of fear? These healthy shifts in our consciousness, in our understanding of the darkness, would help us to change our relationship with the darkness itself and help us to encircle the shadows and the light. Breathe. So, you ready to dive deeper? You sure? Because in order to do so, we have to go into the darkness. Now, what did we say? Today's theme, today's title is Unlearning the Fear of Darkness. But be very clear, you can't unlearn something. What we do is we learn something new that replaces the old. Because things like Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy, did you unlearn about them? Did you unfaith about them? Or did you replace your understanding of, oh, that's mythology. Oh, that's a story. Oh, that's a legend. Oh, that's a... Well, what about things such as equity, justice, freedom? Are they unlearned, or is it more accurate that a new, more effective truth is learned, which replaces the way the previous concept, belief, ideas, paradigms, consciousness have been used? Right? So if we really think about it, for example, regarding equity, justice, and freedom, there was a time where it was legal, it was just to have slaves, to own people, to kidnap people. That was the system of law and order. It was illegal to help a slave escape freedom, emancipation. That was illegal. The abolitionists were breaking the law. So did we unlearn those concepts? No, we didn't unlearn them. We replaced them with concepts of equity, justice, and freedom that were more empowering, life affirming. We swapped them out. We had a new thought about them. So the same idea regarding the darkness, the unknown, we don't unlearn. We learn, we adapt, we become aware of something greater, something more life affirming, and we embody that. Brene Brown says, only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light. Only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness. Now, the darkness could be whatever it is regarding this. Only when we are brave enough to explore our trauma. Only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness of inequity, the darkness of homelessness, the unhoused, the darkness of food deserts, the darkness of, only when we are brave enough to go there and understand the consciousness that created this thing, will we be able to discover and embody the infinite power of life affirming, health, well being, healing, equity, justice, food for all, the beloved community. Only when we are brave enough to go to that place that we don't like. It's not comfortable. Think about when you come home late at night, you come into your apartment, and let's suppose that the fuse blew and it's dark, and you walk in. Now you know your apartment, but you still stub your toe on something that you forgot was in that place in the floor. You still bump into the table because your depth perception is up. You know the table is there, but because it's dark, you can't see it. So your perception of space is altered. And so the manner in which you navigate the room changes versus if it was well lit. Well lit, boom, you just walk. Dark, you might be a little cautious because you don't want to step on something. You don't want to trip over something. You don't want to stub your toe, hit your shin. Only when we are brave enough to explore and navigate the areas that may not be as clearly lit, that may be uncomfortable, will we truly be able to discover the infinite power of our light. The Bible, John 1, verse 5 says, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." Now, we all know this analogy of when it's dark, you light a candle, and the darkness recedes, right? The darkness can't say, "I don't want you here." Doesn't work that way, right? That's why you don't have when you set up the electrical system in your house and there's a dimmer switch, it's not like you can turn the dimmer switch to a certain degree and click, now it turns the darkness on and turns the darkness up or lessens the darkness. It doesn't work that way. There's either light and the dimmer switch brightens it or dims it, because the darkness cannot overcome the light. And if we're really, really honest, then it's actually an interplay, a interdependency that they have with one another in certain degrees. Breathe. Because once again, if we are going to really go into this space of a new thought about the darkness, a new thought about the mystery and the unknown, a new thought about what it means to truly let our innate light shine, then we have to understand how these things connect and interplay, are interdependent, are meta-dependent upon one another, and how we can use them more effectively. Dr. King said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that." Now, when he says darkness cannot drive out darkness, yes, he's using an analogy, a parable of that thing we just talked about from the Bible. But what he's referring to is ignorance. Ignorance cannot drive out ignorance. Only knowledge can do that. Racism cannot drive out racism. Only being anti-racist, only equity, justice, and freedom can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Breathe. Now, when we refer to ignorance, ignorance can mean a wealth of things. Ignorance can mean a lack of knowledge, a lack of understanding, a lack of awareness, a lack of wisdom. It's ignorance. But did you know there was a thing called deliberate ignorance? Deliberate agnotology, the art of deliberate ignorance, which is a culturally induced phenomenon. Now, what did we say earlier? That we were indoctrinated into this idea for eons to fear the darkness, to fear the unknown, to fear the same thing here. Deliberate ignorance is a culturally induced, a culturally indoctrinated form of. And if we are truly going to be free to be our divine selves, then we must unshackle ourselves from this deliberate ignorance and the ignorance that we may not even know that we are ignorant of. For example, there are implicit biases that many people don't even know that they have. And we all have biases of some sort or another. It's part of being human. And we may, for the large part, be ignorant of them until we explore, until we are willing to go to that space and say, I don't know that I have explicit or implicit biases. Let me dive deeper and identify them. Some of them are going to be things we are deeply going to want to change. And some of them, maybe not so much. I may have a bias towards one flavor of ice cream over another. That's not harming anyone. But if I have a bias towards lighter skinned or darker skinned or whatever it is, then that is potentially going to harm someone because it may show up in candidates that I vote for. It may show up in applicants who come for a job and who's accepted and who isn't. So it greatly benefits us to be willing to explore our levels of ignorance, deliberate and otherwise. Now, yes, we're going there with Star Wars because this is a great analogy, a great parable for the idea of light and darkness. You know, the hero's journey, that's what it's all about, light and darkness, the heroes and the villains. Right? That is what it's about. Now, in order for us to really go here, let's explore this idea. The darkness, the Sith. They are the ones who use the dark side of the Force. The Jedi, the users of the light side of the Force. Right? That's pretty clear. Good versus evil. Jedi versus Sith. Light versus darkness. Very clear. But is it? Now, this whole idea of light versus darkness, good versus evil, we can trace it directly to the concept of God and the devil, God and Satan, God and Lucifer. Like we can connect it directly. However, if you are willing, let's pause for a slight sidebar so we can explore a little bit deeper this idea of deliberate ignorance. Are you ready? Because what I want to do is, where did this idea of this idea of Satan, the devil, come from? You know, because dude looks pretty terrifying. If this person rolled up, you know, at your front door trying to sell Girl Scout cookies, more than likely you wouldn't open the door. Where did this idea come from? Now, in order for us to really explore that, remember, deliberate ignorance, we have to go back, turn back the clock, go back in time. It begins with the Hebrew word halel is the verb, comes from the verb to shine, and means light bearer, bright one, or day star. Some say morning star. And the word Lucifer is the Latin translation of that word, right? Lucifer comes from the verb to shine. Lucifer means, in Latin, means the bearer of light, the bright one, right? Breathe. One of the earliest depictions, and it is said that this is probably the earliest depiction, this mosaic, if you note the angel that's blue, is Satan, right? Now, that's not quite the same image we just saw. It's not quite the same image. This isn't necessarily a terrifying image. The one in blue and the one in orange don't really look that different other than
One's blue and one's orange. Blue chakra, orange chakra, I don't know. But this is one of the, it is said, the earliest, but 6th century. This is the image of Satan that was being depicted. Now, it's important that we note the goats in front of him, because that goat motif is going to show up as this idea evolves. But we have this image of Satan, Lucifer, and then we have this image of Satan, Lucifer, the devil, and then there are others. And none of these are quite that terrifying, quote unquote, demonic visage of horns and fangs and pointed ears and claws and hooves, and none of these. Now, that sculpture in the middle, there's some talons on his wings, and the wings are sort of bat-ish, but he himself doesn't come across as this terribly horrifying image that we saw a few slides ago. Let's continue. There's a woodcut from Dante's Inferno, the Divine Comedy, where we begin to see the idea of Lucifer devouring and torturing. But it is important to note that in medieval Christian theology, Satan, in many stories and theater productions and mystery plays, showed up as a comedic character. A comedic character, comic relief, and Satan would fall and frolic and fart. Satan would fall, frolic, and fart, and was seen as more of a nuisance to God's divine plan. So even here, still, Satan was something to laugh at, not something to fear. Now, the image starts to move when we get to the play Dr. Faustus, where the character is given red tights. Now we see the introduction of red coming into the concept, because then we move further and we find now in the early modern period, now there is the shift where Satan is being seen as increasingly powerful, gradually becoming increasingly more powerful. The fear became a dominant aspect. In the 15th century, the fear of witchcraft created panic, and the panic intensified. Then you get to the Puritans of New England, where rebellious Puritan women were seen to be giving birth to stillborn monsters with claws, sharp horns, etc. The Puritans began to have this idea of the Native Americans, the indigenous people of the Americas, as worshipers of Satan, as the children of the devil. Later, because you follow the evolution of deliberate ignorance, because then you get to a time where there's this branch of American evangelicalism that then vilifies and creates the enemy of this group of evangelicals. This group says that we are higher and lighter, and you are satanic. And the interesting thing is, this battle within and this idea of Satan, the devil, Lucifer, as predominantly being the enemy of evangelicalism is present in American fundamentalism today. That the devil is attacking evangelicalism. Like, that's the enemy that the devil needs to bring down. Well, but pause. Because all of this, what is the point? What is the point of all of this? This kind of deliberate ignorance. What is the purpose of it? Very simple. These images scare people. When you create the image of the enemy, the adversary, that looks terrifying, it is easier to control and to manipulate the minds and the lives of individuals. It's simply a tool used by certain individuals to control others. So if we're going to unlearn, which we know we can't do, we're going to shift our consciousness, then it's important to understand, where do I feel fear regarding the darkness? Now, there are those who have it's labeled as a mental illness regarding the darkness. Nyctophobia, which goes by other names as well, but it is a legitimate, now it's considered an extreme and often irrational or abnormal fear of the night or darkness, but it is a legitimate mental illness that people feel fear of the darkness. And that's why there are psychologists, psychiatrists, and therapists that they can work with. Now, there are many others who do not have nyctophobia, and yet the fear of the darkness persists. Because if I were to say to most of us, go into one of these rooms, if we are honest, one of them is more inviting than the other. One of them inspires greater comfort than the other. Because, well, if that one has light, then it's easier for me to see what's in it. If that one's dark, I don't know what's in there. I don't know who is in there. So if we're honest, we don't need to be experiencing nyctophobia to fear the darkness, to fear the unknown, to fear the mystery. So our invitation once again is to step back and say, what is mine to do regarding that which I fear, the darkness, that which I fear, the unknown, that which I fear, the mystery, that which I fear, what I may not be able to control. Rebecca Solnit says, leave the door open for the unknown, the door into the dark. That's where the most important things come from, where you yourself came from, and where you will go. Leave the door open. Are you willing to leave the door open? Now, both of these images of the street are two different views of the same street, same alley in New York. Now, if we are honest and being true, then we understand that the invitation isn't to just say, I'm not afraid of the dark, and just go down this dark street by yourself at 3 o'clock in the morning. No. There's a certain level of common sense that says, yeah, no, I'm going to take because we understand that there are those who do prey on people to rob and rape and murder. That's a legitimate thing right now until such time as the consciousness around it is shifted. So this whole idea of being prudent regarding the darkness and being fearful of the darkness are two different things. Because in this idea, it's not being afraid of the dark, it's being afraid of, or being prudent, being cautious regarding who might be down there with the intent to cause harm. So it's common sense. It's being prudent. It's being able to discern and be cautious. But even in that, our invitation is not to fear, not to have a consciousness of fear or worry or dread. Because I know martial arts, and 5'10", in relatively good shape, and I will not say, well, I am a man and I know martial arts and I'm going to be safe, and then go down the street. Why? What do I have to prove? Nothing. I don't mind taking an extra 10 minutes to walk around the block because it's safer, because it's more prudent to do so. I don't need to purposefully prove to myself, or as Yeshua in the desert, to prove to the devil that Jesus didn't have anything to prove to the devil. Job didn't have anything to prove to the devil. Like in these uh, metaphysical, metaphorical, allegorical parables and stories, we understand there is no reason, there is nothing to prove to anyone. When we embody the truth and we understand. So just be clear. Just be clear. Being prudent and this whole idea of fear, there's a balance between them. Okay? I just want to make sure we understand that. Someone can say, I'm not going down that alley, and someone says, why? Are you afraid? No, I'm not afraid. I'm intelligent, I'm wise, and I'm prudent. Breathe. Dr. Holmes says, sitting in the shadow, we may not really believe that there is any sunshine, but the sun would be there all the time. So at midnight here, where I live, doesn't mean there's no sunshine. No, the sun is still shining. The sun is still shining. It's still there. It is there, but we must awaken to it. So as children, we may have believed that at nighttime, the sun swapped out and the moon came in, or that the moon is simply the nighttime version of the sun. It's all kind of things that kids make up in our minds, or that people tell us to, because they don't want to go into. See, what happens is the Earth rotates on its axis, and the 2-year-old me is not gonna be like, what are you talking about? I don't understand. It's easy. The moon comes in. It's like work. When daddy goes to work and then daddy comes home and someone else goes, it's like that. So when the sun does its work and it leaves, then this one comes. Oh, that makes sense. But the reality is the sun is ever present. The moon is ever present. The dark is ever present. The light is ever present. Both and. So are we willing to awaken to that same thing that we understand in the sense of space and astronomy and science? We understand it when it comes to that. Are we willing to have that same kind of awakening to the same awareness to our own lives and our own selves? So do a little assignment for a moment. You don't have to do it right now, but think about all of the qualities that we attribute to light. What are some of the qualities that we attribute to light? And then do the same thing and think about what are the qualities that we attribute to the darkness. We think of magic. There's white magic, good. Black magic, bad. Wait. Say what now? The black cat, bad. Wait a minute. Am I sensing a theme here? Light and dark. What are the qualities that we have been indoctrinated to believe? Elizabeth Kubler-Ross says that people are like stained glass windows. They sparkle and shine when the sun is out, but when the darkness sets in, their beauty is revealed only if there is a light from within. Now, it's important for us to recognize and say, there are times when the light shines from the outside, as she just said. There are times when the light shines from the outside in. And there are times when it shines from the inside out. But our invitation is to be so convicted in our beauty and our awareness that no matter where the light is shining from, the radiant divine colors of God are being expressed. Doesn't matter where the light's coming from. When we awaken to the truth of our being, outside in, inside out, the divine radiance and color of God are expressed in, through, and as us. Period. Breathe. Because once again, it's easy for us to understand this concept of light and shadow, the interplay. And none of us would dare to say that that thing connected to this man's feet is evil or bad or something he should try to run from. Because it doesn't matter how far he runs, it's still going to be there, right? And it's important to understand that, as Richard Rohr says, the closer you get to the light, the more of your shadow you see. See, if he backs up, say 5, 6, 7 spaces, there's no shadow on the ground because he's not close enough to the light for the shadow. And the shadow of the building and his shadow blend because the shadow of the building obscures the light that would cast his shadow. But the closer he gets to the light, the more of his shadow he sees. The closer you get to the light, the more of your shadow you see. The closer you get to your healing processes, the more of your trauma you may see. The closer you get to your own divine awareness, the more of your indoctrination you may see. The more you learn and become aware of, the more you realize, the less you know and are aware of. Breathe. Because this is our journey, this is our adventure. So let's revisit where we began. Dun, 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 Star Wars. Once again, we know and understand that there is the Sith, the dark side of the Force users, and the Jedi, the light side of the Force users. But for only a select few of you Jedi Star Wars nerds, did you know that there is a middle path? Did you know that? If you know what it is, type it in the chat. Because only a select few folks are going to know this. But there is a middle path. Now, in the canon that is Star Wars, did you also know that there is a creed? The Sith code, or the creed of the Sith. And the Jedi code, or the creed of the Jedi. But did you know, once again, that person in the middle, the gray Jedi, the gray code. Now, you can come back and read this at your own leisure at some point. But the main thing I want to point out is that word in the middle of the gray code, balance. It is the balance of the dark and the light. It is the balance that the gray code or the gray Jedi seek to embody. There is no dark side nor a light side. There is only the Force. There is no good God and bad God. There is only God. And it's the balance of all of that which we are, all of that which. So when Carl Jung talks about the shadow, the individual and the collective, when Carl Jung talks about the ego, all of that, it's how do I bring this into balance? The ego is not the villain. It is not the enemy. It is simply a tool. How do I bring it into balance and use it more effectively? Breathe. Reverend Ray says, if you want to truly live your best life, if we want to truly live our best lives, if we want to heal the world, if we want to truly create the beloved community, in other words, a world that works for all, we must begin to practice the fine art of balancing the paradox. Light and dark, known and unknown, human and divine, individual and one, both and, not either or, not light or darkness, both and, not the known and the unknown, both and. Known or unknown, sorry. It's not either or, it's both and. Human or divine, both and. Both and. How do we balance this fine art of duality, paradox, or seeming paradox? Breathe. Because that's the practice. Balance. This week's declaration or affirmation, I will say it first, then if you feel in alignment, say it with me on the second go round. I release all fear of the dark and the unknown, and I am open to new life-affirming perspectives. Together. I release all fear of the dark and the unknown, and I am open to new life affirming perspectives. Breathe. Our invitation to practice and the discussion points for the Thursday night study group. What are some common beliefs and myths about light and darkness that you have been exposed to? What do these common beliefs and myths, where do these common beliefs and myths come from? And how are they spread? How have these common myths and beliefs helped you? How have these common myths and beliefs hurt you or hindered you? What about your own inner darkness and light have you avoided? What about the darkness and the light are you invited to embrace or to put into balance? And lastly, how can you practice healing any of those common beliefs and myths that have hurt or hindered you individually in order to heal collectively? Breathe. Breathe. As we go into that space of un momento, por favor. For some reason, technical difficulties. Breathe as we enter into that space of divine awareness, infinite knowing, recognizing right here and right now the isness and allness of God as light and darkness, known and unknown, the balance of yin and yang. It's all there is. And we breathe into this awareness, embodying it, having no need to fear, for we are wise and we are prudent in the manner in which we show up as divine beings, having a divine experience that we call human, but no less divine, no less spiritual, no less magnificent. For all is God right here and right now. Love is all there is. And we balance this idea that Dr. Holmes talked about of love and law. We balance it. Yin, yang, we balance it. Heaven and earth, we balance it. The seen and unseen and the yet to be seen, we balance it. The inner, the outer, we balance it. We balance it. And we move as those who are balanced. We move like that ballerina who is balanced, like that deep indigenous dancer who is balanced. We balance it like the artist who is sculpting, balanced. The photographer and composition, balanced. The architect and buildings, balanced. All of creation, balanced. And that is how we steward our lives. That is how we embody and move and have our beingness balanced. We breathe. And it is with great gratitude that I know that as this Sunday message ends and each person goes about their daily living, daily expressing, daily joys of being their divine and magnificent selves, each one does so magnificently in perfect, divine, ecstatic, joyful balance. Releasing what no longer serves, embodying that which is the truth of their being, grounded in principle, living, moving, and having their beingness as God. And so it is. Namaste, blessings, much love and appreciation, everyone. See you over in Zoom. There are technical difficulties. What's going on? Love you.